I definitely missed out on so much,
Right.
like I said, I was away every weekend,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
evening after school was spent training.
Right. Okay.
Nowadays, like I don't have a normal life at all. Like I don't drink.
Yep.
My diet, I'm so strict with my diet. I go to
Yeah.
bed so
Yeah.
early, but when you have to make so many sacrifices as a parent, and the
Yeah.
sad thing is that your kids probably won't appreciate it until they're
Yeah.
a bit older. But the problem is that that feeling of winning doesn't last as long as the kind of negative feelings after you lose, after
Yep.
so I get it. And then the interrogation starts, and the amount of fallouts we'd have as a family were like massive, and that all
Yeah.
stemmed from me playing squash. So
Yeah.
you connect your self-worth to your performance on the squash court. So it's like I don't feel worthy as a person if I'm not performing how I should, when it's my job, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not gonna just have a road where you just win. It's just not realistic, and also you're not gonna improve by that.
Yeah.
It's like the failing and learning what happened.
So we're really excited today to welcome a professional squash player who's currently ranked number 8th in the world and rose from 185 into the world's top 10 in the space of just 9 months after finishing a degree at Harvard. And he's the first Englishwoman to win the Commonwealth Games squash title, winning gold in Birmingham 2022. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Gina Kennedy to the show to share her secrets and sacrifices of her professional squash journey so far, and much, much more. So Gina, welcome to the show.
Hi Simon, thank you for having me.
That's okay, it's no problem at all. It's been a little while coming. However, we finally got there, because I know you've been really busy completing your masters, and obviously you've been competing as well. So it's great to finally get you on the show.
Sorry, it's been extremely busy, finishing my season.
Yep.
It's been pretty back to back tournaments, traveling all around the world. But yeah, just got back to England at the weekend. So now I've got a nice 6-week block before the 2023-4 season starts.
Right, fantastic. Okie dokie. So before we start, so the listeners can get to know you a little bit better, my children have come up with 10 quick fire would you rather questions. And normally at this point, it's my children that ask the questions. However, unfortunately today, they're all away either competing or training. So unfortunately, you're stuck with me. So I've got the questions that my children have left for us. So here we go. The first question is, would you rather game or read a book?
Read a book.
Read a book. Would you rather win a million or earn a million?
Earn a million.
Earn a million. Would you rather have a takeaway or eat out?
Eat out.
Eat out. Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
Too hot.
Too hot. Would you rather wear Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Nike all the way. Would you rather own a Ferrari or a Lamborghini?
Ooh, Ferrari.
Ferrari. Would you rather do cardio or lift weights?
I like cardio.
Cardio. The next one is, would you rather explore space or explore the ocean?
Ooh, gosh, both petrify me. Probably the ocean.
The ocean. Would you rather be able to change the past or change the future?
Ooh. Ooh, great question. Change the future.
Change the future. And then the last one is, would you rather play doubles with Nicole David or Susan Devoy?
Oh, I think Nicole David.
Nicole David. Okay, so just for the listeners and the viewers at home, Nicole was Player of the Year 7 times, and I think she was number 1 for about 109 consecutive months, which is absolutely bonkers. It's ridiculous. And then Susan, she won 4 world titles. She won 8 British Opens, but she actually won every British Open that she competed with, if I remember correctly. And we've done our research correct as well. And it's probably something that really resonates well with yourself more than most. However, after watching the rise of Gina Kennedy on Facebook the other day, to have the likes of Amanda Sobe, Ali Farag, Noran Goa, and Mike Way all mentioning how ridiculous your rise has been in the last couple of years, I'm sure it won't be long before you're chasing down all those achievements and titles too. So we're kind of eagerly watching that space to see what happens next at Elite Children. So we'll see what happens there for you.
Yes, yeah, got a big shoes to fill after their lovely comments. Definitely didn't expect all that, and it was obviously amazing to hear. But yeah, now I've got to kind of prove it to them that I can do it. So hopefully.
Okay, so let's begin. So as you know, the podcast is to shine a light on the secrets and sacrifices all families go through to allow their children to become elite level athletes, and that's something really close to our hearts with having 4 children currently on that journey. So my first question is, could you take me back to your earliest childhood memories of when you was living at home in Beckenham in southeast London, and what family life was like back then for us?
Yeah, so I grew up in Beckenham, which is a town outside of London, and I was extremely sporty from, the moment I could walk, apparently. My mum always said that I could literally run before I could walk. So which is interesting coming from my family because both of my parents aren't sporty at all.
Right, okay.
My mum, she'll say herself that she has absolutely no hand-eye coordination. And my dad is like, he's a strong guy for sure, but he never did
Yep.
any sport
Right,
competitively. He
okay.
just
Yeah.
so it's interesting. And my brother never I've got an older brother 2.5 years older than me, and he
Okay.
also just wasn't sporty at all. So
Right,
I
okay.
was I was definitely the anomaly in the family, and I think the main reason that my parents kind of pursued a lot of different sports for me was because my teachers in primary school would pick up on stuff like if we were running in PE or
Yep.
whatever, and they would say, "Oh wow, she's pretty good." So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually started off as a runner.
Yep.
I competed for Blackheath and Bromley, and
Yep.
I was probably like the cliche of whether if you're like born to do something. I
Yep.
think
Yep.
talent wise, I was probably born to be a runner, to be honest. I was
Yep.
like winning the London Mini Marathon when I was younger. I
Yep.
held the English record for the 1200 meters and I was young.
Yep.
But I just genuinely could not deal with the pressure of it when I was
Right.
younger.
Okay.
It was really interesting. I was like a 12-year-old girl, and just like 2 weeks before a race, I would just be like crying with
Wow.
nerves, telling my
Yep. Yep.
parents how much I. But then obviously after the fact, like once I'd won the race, I
Yeah.
would be like,
Yeah.
I love running, it's the best thing. So my parents never actually knew how much
Yep.
I was kind of suffering inside. But yeah, I also did a lot of other sport at the time, squash being one of them,
Yep.
tennis, football.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I kind of just fell into squash really
Okay.
at the end, and yeah, kind of continued down that route. But it I could have kind of, without sounding like, cocky or whatever, I
Yep.
could have kind of chosen what sport I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of my personality, I'd have probably wanted to like do it
Yeah.
competitively.
Well, I did actually read that you was ranked number 1 in the UK for the 1500s at like under 12s, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
you also used to train with Dina Asher Smith as well at the Harriers, didn't you? As well, I'd read. Is that correct?
So yeah, her and I used to, when I did a bit of sprinting,
Yeah.
like we both used John Blackie, who was the same coach.
Right. Okay.
She's a tiny bit older than me, so
Right.
maybe we overlapped for a few
Yeah.
sessions, but yeah, no, we just like trained at the same
Right. Okay.
facility. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, very good. So then when was it you kind of fell in love with kind of squash? Was it the age of round about kind of 12, 13-ish?
Uh, yeah, so I started playing when I was 9, and
Right, okay.
I I absolutely loved it. But the thing with squash is that it was definitely like the least time commitment that you
Okay.
needed. So
Yep.
at that point, I was playing like twice a week.
Yep.
And at the same time, I was also playing tennis at the Park Langley Club, and they
Right.
came up to me and they said, if you want to kind of pursue this and be more serious about it, you're going to have to start coming down in the mornings. We're
Yeah.
going to have to start potentially looking at, homeschooling, blah, blah,
Right.
blah.
Yeah.
Whereas with squash, just because of the nature of it, like there are just such a smaller pool of people who are playing it.
Yeah.
I was playing 2 or 3 times a week and then playing tournaments at the weekend and winning them. So
Yeah.
um, it was I decided, not my parents as well with the time commitment, we decided to kind of not carry on with tennis
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I kind of just like fell into squash.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another interesting part about it, like the time commitment and stuff.
Right. Okay. So what would a typical day look like for you with regards to your, say, squash training back then? And I asked because our eldest daughter, she plays tennis, and as we'd previously discussed, um, she's actually homeschooled now for that reason that you mentioned. So she basically she was kind of traveling around. She was traveling around like kind of Europe doing various like kind of ITF tournaments, and she was struggling to kind of fit in all her schoolwork because of that. So then um, last year we took the decision to bring her out of school so we could manage her schoolwork, or my wife could manage her schoolwork, so she knew where she was up to, just so she could kind of concentrate on kind of competing and making sure she had enough time to like kind of train and get all the practices in. So what would a typical day of kind of squash training look like for you?
Yeah, yeah, it's so tough. So for me, luckily, once I'd like committed to squash, I would play every evening after school, and I
Okay.
would be traveling, around an hour to get to Bexley a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I'd never do anything before school, so it would always be
Okay.
school, get back at 3, and then 3:30 my parents would pick me up from school or get home, and then we'd go off. So
Okay.
it would change. I'd do like, 2 coaching sessions a week, with like an individual session, one squad. I'd have
Okay.
a match, and then I'd have another like coaching slash fitness session.
Okay.
And then the weekends I'd be away pretty much every weekend for tournaments or for
Right. Yeah.
England squads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I never had to train in the mornings.
Right. Okay. Okay. So we had Jory Davis on not so long ago. It was like the last podcast that we did, and we was asking her what her first, say, like wow moment was. And basically we were saying like, what was your first wow moment where you first thought that, wow, this is something that I'm like really good at and I'm gonna like have a career with it. And her first wow moment was when she actually got drafted from college by the WNBA. It was. And her first wow moment was when she got signed for a professional basketball team. She had her picture on the side of a bus, and that was her first wow moment in the sport. So I was just wondering if, or when your first wow moment was with kind of your squash.
Um, that's a good question. I think so. I had because so I grew up, as like number one in England. I
Yep.
won the European Championships and stuff. So I always felt this like expectation that I had to
Right.
go pro
Right.
because
Okay.
I had
Yep.
potential to do well, and
Yep.
that was always in the back of my head. But I think because of that, it made me even more kind of like I'm definitely I because I was always sporty. I was always known
Yep.
as Gina, this athlete, like she's gonna be a sports person, which,
Yep.
I turned out it was true. But I wanted to kind of see what else I was
Yep.
about as well. I
Okay.
didn't just want to
Yep.
be
Yep.
known as Gina, the athlete, which is
Yep.
why I was set from a young age that I wanted to go to uni.
Right. Okay.
So it wasn't necessarily going to go to America, but I always knew I was going to go to uni, which is why I, put a lot of time into my academics,
Yep.
and wanted to like excel at that as well. Because so yeah, I think my wow moment with squash wasn't until I kind of went pro,
Right.
and
Okay. Yep.
uh like I remember being at the British Open and then them
Yep.
calling my name out, and um like my picture came on and it was just so professionally done.
Yep.
And I was like, oh wow, like I'm
Yeah.
kind of playing with the big guns now.
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, that was only like this year, really.
Right. Okay. Do you know what? When we hear
um
stories, so we've had a number of guests on now. When we hear stories like that, it always brings a smile to my face because we kind of, over the course of all these kind of shows that we've done, we've come to realize how many kind of like days, weeks, months, years worth of hard work and sacrifice there is. But to kind of see kind of be so kind of expressive about how nice a moment it was. It's always really nice to kind of see the athletes like that as well. And it's just something that always brings a smile to your face when we've kind of asked that first wow moment one, because it is something that always just sticks in your mind, isn't it, really? And we've had loads of different guests who've kind of mentioned a similar thing. So we had Danny Evans on. So he was a professional basketballer, and he played for Team GB, it was. And they went competing in Turkey. It was, and his first wow moment was when they'd pulled up at the hotel, and they had like security guards as they was coming off the coach. There were loads of fans there. They all wanted like kind of the autographs, and that was his first wow moment of thinking like, wow, this is pretty special. This is like something that I really want to like kind of do. It's just so nice hearing like all those stories. It is
yeah.
just a nice kind of feel good moment, really. So they're always really
Yeah.
nice, those.
Yeah,
Um,
no, they are.
yeah. So with that, then, would you say you had like kind of a normal childhood growing up? Because we've had other guests on, probably more from say like kind of a football kind of background, and say like Danny, who we've just kind of mentioned, whereby they wasn't allowed to kind of like go out with friends at night after training because they'd know they'd be getting up training in the morning, so they needed to go to kind of bed early. They needed to like kind of refuel. And however, we
Mm.
also had Angus Gillams on, who used to play squash as well, and he spoke about training 2 to 3 times a day. It was when he was about 15, 16, and missing quite a lot of kind of lessons and lectures at like kind of school and things. So would you say you had a normal childhood, or was it kind of like you've just mentioned a little bit later on in the journey where things aren't as normal kind of now?
Yeah, I would say I had a normal childhood for sure.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely missed out on so much, like
Right.
I said, I was away every weekend,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
evening after school was spent training.
Right. Okay.
But that was kind of like my my normality, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I never missed school or missed lessons because um I didn't like up the training
Yeah.
until now. So in some ways I definitely had a normal childhood, but
Yeah.
um in other ways, like, I wasn't out partying a lot
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because I couldn't. And I
Yeah.
definitely at one point in my junior career I envied that. I
Yeah.
wanted to be I felt a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, and all my
Yeah. Yeah.
friends were going out having fun and I was just like
Yeah.
competing. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I never once like didn't carry on training the next week or missed a
Right.
tournament. Like, it was
Yeah.
kind of just always felt like it was always in my DNA, and my
Yeah.
parents had absolutely no influence on it, really. They,
Okay.
like I said, they don't come from an athletic background, and
Yeah.
they were so supportive in terms of taking me anywhere I wanted to go, but they never
Yeah.
pushed me at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really interesting. Nowadays, like, I don't have a normal life at all. Like, I don't drink.
Yep.
My diet, I'm so strict with my diet. I go to
Yeah.
bed so
Yeah.
early. But when I
Yeah.
was a junior, I got away with, not being the utmost professional at all.
Right. Okay. So and again, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to start the podcast, because as we said, we've got 4 children currently on that journey. But then because our eldest plays tennis and she's traveling around quite a lot, that means like either myself or my wife traveling with her, because at the time she was only 14, 15. We've got 2 boys that play football, and they're kind of training, say, like 2, 3, 4 times a week. Then they'll have matches at the weekend. So
Mm.
consequently, we was never all together. It might be like myself and my wife would be spending like say 2, 3 weeks of the month apart. So
Yeah.
we was thinking like, oh, are we doing something like kind of wrong here with like kind of managing the children and managing how many like kind of competitions or how many football matches they're playing, because it didn't seem like kind of normal to us. However, once we started doing this podcast and started speaking to like all the guests like yourself, like you just mentioned, like competing every weekend, we had Anna Smith, who was a professional tennis player. She was saying that she used to travel around every weekend, and to kind of hear those stories as a parent, it's almost reassuring for us to hear that, well, do you know what, that's what you have to kind of do. That's the kind of sacrifice at the weekend. It's not having a lie in or that
Yeah.
extra hour. It's like, well, do you know what, we need to set the alarm early, because we need to like kind of go and travel, and we need to like kind of go to, so like next week, for instance, our eldest is in another ITF tournament, but in Edinburgh. So we need to drive to Edinburgh from like kind of Manchester. Whereas the week before she was in Nigeria, and she was away for like say 3-4 weeks. But so to hear these stories, it's always like really reassuring as a parent, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to kind of outline and to highlight to parents that it is kind of a normal thing that you kind of do if you're wanting your child to be a professional in whatever sport it might be. So yeah, it's always nice to hear those stories and to kind of shine the light on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the sacrifice, obviously, as the athlete yourself, you feel like you're sacrificing so much, which you are, but especially when you're younger, I don't think
Yeah,
you kind of appreciate how much the parents sacrifice. Like you said, you guys are the ones who are financially paying for us to stay in
yeah,
these hotel rooms, travel to these tournaments, enter us in tournaments.
yeah,
Like the sacrifice you make, and then like my mum would always travel with me, and my dad would
yeah,
stay home with my brother.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like that kind of family dynamic as well changes because
yeah,
I'm with my mum all the time,
yeah,
and then I come back and dad wants to hear about how it
yeah.
went. If I'm not in the mood to talk about my lot, then he feels like more left out because he wasn't
Yeah,
there. So
yeah,
it's it's the sacrifice. You have to make so many sacrifices as a parent, and the
yeah,
sad thing is that your kids probably won't appreciate it until they're
yeah,
a bit older. They won't
yeah,
like kind of reflect on how much you guys are giving up
yeah,
until they're older, and they're going to be so grateful, of
yeah,
course. But it is I think as a parent of a successful athlete, like you have to invest just as much, if not more, than the
yeah.
child.
However, again, when you kind of see how kind of passionate your child is, and you see like kind of the progress that your kind of children are making, and obviously, especially with yourself now, like your parents and family must be so proud of you for what you've achieved with regards to kind of your academic side and your kind of sporty side as well. So yeah, as a parent, it's seeing those kind of outcomes, and you just kind of really appreciate it, and you're just so pleased that your kind of child's doing so well, and you don't kind of see it as a sacrifice for yourself, because you
Yeah.
enjoy like kind of watching your kind of children play, and you'd do anything for them, wouldn't you, really? So so yeah, it's just nice to kind of see you guys kind of enjoying yourselves. So
Yeah, and I think
okay,
that's the main thing, isn't it? I think I can imagine as a parent it would be extremely tough if you're like sacrificing so much and your child is extremely talented and doing
yeah,
well, but maybe perhaps isn't putting in the work that they need to kind of get to that next level.
yeah,
And that's where it
yeah,
gets pretty difficult.
yeah,
How much as a parent can you really influence
yeah,
your child, or how
yeah,
much of it has to come from them. But you
yeah,
know, you don't want to drive them all the way to Edinburgh if they're not gonna
yeah,
put in the work. So
yeah, yeah.
it's a very difficult difficult thing.
It is. Um, okay, so from winning the European Under-19 Squash Championships in Prague in 2019, and then winning the Betty Ritchie Award in 2020, which is one of the biggest honours in US college squash. Then going on a run of 50 out of 55 tour wins just after COVID, reaching your first PSA World Tour Finals in October 21, plus winning your gold medal in the Commonwealth Games. The list could kind of go on. All amazing achievements and a rapid rise to kind of prominence in such a short space of time, like we've said. Um, Could you just kind of explain to us how you kind of personally cope with the peaks and troughs and the roller coaster of emotions along the way? Because I'm presuming it's not all just a kind of straight line, kind of upward kind of scale trajectory. I'm sure it's kind of speed bumps and it's kind of ups and downs along the way.
Yes, I like the ups and downs along the way are just honestly crazy. Like it's funny as I obviously am finishing the season at number 8 in the world, which,
Yep.
as an outsider, I'm sure would say like, wow, that's incredible. But I think it all depends on kind of your belief in yourself and what
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
achieve. So if I had to retire tomorrow,
Yep.
if I had to retire tomorrow, I wouldn't be satisfied with
Yeah. Yeah.
um, being number 8 in the world. And although you just kindly listed my achievements, which definitely make me so proud, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the it's still kind of, I'm still like disappointed with a lot of stuff that happened this
Right.
season. And
Okay.
um I think dealing with those lows
Yeah.
is a lot harder, a
Yeah.
lot harder said than done.
Yeah.
Obviously the highs of kind of winning the gold medal and
Yeah.
winning tournaments, and that feeling of winning is the best feeling that
Yeah.
one can get, in my opinion, when you work
Yeah.
hard for something and you win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but the problem is that that feeling of winning doesn't last as long as the kind of negative feelings after you lose, after
Yeah.
you and the thing about losing is it's all dependent on your self-belief. So
Yeah.
when I play somebody like the world number one, I don't feel like I'm at that level yet. So
Right.
losing to her doesn't kind of affect me so badly.
Okay.
But as you get higher up the rankings, if you
Yeah.
lose to
Yeah.
somebody who you believe you should beat,
Yeah.
then that kind of feeling of like disappointment in yourself is, in my opinion, a lot worse
Yeah.
than that feeling of winning,
Yeah.
So it's a tough life really when you're kind of just striving towards that feeling of winning, but
Yeah.
you, you're gonna lose a lot more in your career than you're gonna win,
Yeah.
most likely. So um all that, yeah, it is definitely, like you said, a roller coaster. But I think the main thing for me is like I absolutely love my day-to-day life, and
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I enjoy the tournament so much. So the intense feelings of like winning and losing
Yeah.
are obviously intense and they're going to play on your mind, but I kind of like get to wake up the next day and still do what I love,
Yeah. Yeah.
which makes it all worth it, really.
Yeah. So how do you know when so when you've had a defeat then um immediately after that kind of defeat, and I'm speaking from a parent whose
Mm,
say eldest daughter plays tennis, which could be kind of construed as similar to like kind of squash because it's an individual sport.
mm.
When you've immediately finished squash, do you personally prefer, say, like parents or coaches to kind of leave you alone for a little bit? Or do you like them like giving you kind of feedback straight away, or do they know just to kind of like leave you alone for a little bit, or
Yeah, I
what
think,
kind of happens immediately after?
yeah, so because now I'm traveling alone, it will
Right.
always
Okay.
be through text, that I get
Yeah.
feedback.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
um I def like my parents, I think, are so good because they will always message me after a match that I've lost with something supportive. It's
Yeah.
just like unlucky, here for you, like,
Yeah.
or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Even though I know my dad especially has learned a lot throughout my career
Yeah.
of to not give feedback when I lose,
Right.
because
Okay.
it could be different for other people, but like I said, my parents don't play squash, so
Yeah.
of course they've watched it enough and they do know a few things. They
Yeah.
don't, they wouldn't know as much as like my coach, so I don't
Yeah.
really appreciate like coaching
Yeah.
tips from them, I guess,
Right.
just
Okay.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
I get I get coaching tips from my coach.
Yeah.
But like they're so good with being supportive after a loss, and they know to kind of just send me a message so they know that they've watched and they're
Yeah.
supporting me, and that like I've never once felt like, they've been disappointed in me or anything
Right.
like that. And
Yeah.
I'm really lucky because I know that uh,
Yeah.
you know, other people don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Um, like yeah, they're just like extremely supportive.
Yeah.
And even if I don't always want to hear it, it's like always nice to see that message that they're like
Yeah.
there for me when I'm ready to kind of talk about it.
Okay, and that's something. Being perfectly honest, that I'm trying to like kind of do better at with like our eldest, because you do get really disappointed if you're not there and you're not kind of watching and you kind of see the results kind of come through
Mhm.
when they posted. You can get really disappointed as a parent, and you're thinking like, did they try hard enough? Were they concentrating? Did they kind of stick to like kind of the tactics? And I've in the past
Yeah.
probably kind of interrogated my daughter a little bit, kind of too much after the kind of tournament, which
Yeah.
now I kind of understand is not kind of healthy, and it doesn't kind of work for her. It means
Mm.
myself and like our eldest daughter will probably like kind of fall out. And now we kind of do more what you've just mentioned about like your mum and dad do. We just kind of like offer like kind of support, make sure she's all right, and she can kind of like then speak to a coach. And she's old enough now where she can kind of understand where she possibly like kind of went wrong, and she can like have a conversation with a coach, and then she can decide what she needs to kind of work on for her next kind of tournament, rather than myself probably sticking my nose in a little bit kind of too much.
Yeah.
So again, as a parent, it is quite kind of hard to get that balance quite right. And I'll hold my
Yeah.
hands up. I've not always got that balance kind of right, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean it is so hard, and like my dad, fair play to him, he's gotten so much better because when I was a junior,
Yeah.
he, like you said, if you for now he can watch my matches on Squash TV, so he can see what's
Right.
happened
Yeah. Yeah.
himself. It makes it easier because he can just be like, "Oh God, she threw that match away mentally," you know what I mean? So he knows what's happening. Whereas
Yeah.
if my mum's come to a tournament with me, I've lost to
Yeah.
somebody I shouldn't lose to,
Yeah.
course, like he wants to know what happened, like how did you do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Especially, I do think, not in a bad way, but I
Yeah.
think my dad is probably more competitive with me beating other
Yeah.
people than
Well, it
my
sounds
mum
very
is.
familiar with our family. This.
Yeah, like it's like obviously I'm the one competing, but
Yeah.
it's still like he wants to be like me winning is like him winning as well, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like that, like he doesn't want me to lose to somebody that,
Yeah.
so I get it. And then the interrogation starts, and the amount of fallouts we'd have as a family were like
Mm,
massive, and that all
yeah.
stemmed from me playing me playing squash. So
Yeah.
um he's done so well now. He'll
Yeah.
always send me a message, and he knows that I just really don't enjoy talking about it
Yeah.
with them, just
Yeah.
because yeah, it like frustrates me a lot. So he's done so well to, which must be so hard because obviously he wants to
Yeah.
hear, he wants to give his input, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, it's tough.
So it's similar for us really, because it was so I used to do a lot of training with my daughter, like all her S&C stuff when she was
Oh, cool.
probably from about 8 up until about kind of 12. But like I said, the amount of times that we was like probably leaving the tennis court early because I didn't think she was trying, or she was too tired, or she wasn't listening, and then you'd be driving home in the car, and they'd be
Yeah,
like it'd be silent all the way home, and no one would be like kind of talking.
yeah,
So it was getting a little bit
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
unhealthy for us, and I said I'd rather not kind of do a S&C stuff and someone else do it, because I didn't want it to
Mm,
spoil our father-daughter relationship. Uh,
yeah,
and again, like now we've got like two younger boys, and like myself in particular, it just kind of treat them so much differently from how we did with like kind of our eldest. So again, we've kind of like learned what to do, what not to do, and we've kind of changed it for like our other like kind of two boys, and like our youngest she's only 6 at the moment. So
right.
so yeah, we've kind of changed a lot and learned so much from like our
Yeah,
eldest, because she's been on that journey. Because again, we're not from that kind of background, so we've just been trying to learn as much as we could along
Yeah,
the way as well. So
yeah,
these
yeah,
podcasts for us have been amazing to like kind of
yeah.
learn so much from people like yourself who are kind of currently on that journey or have kind of been there and kind of done that.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and I reflect on it, and it must have been so hard. You know, like I said, my brother wasn't involved in sport, so
yeah,
I'm this new like it's exciting, isn't it, when you've
yeah,
got like a potential
yeah,
elite sports person. Like you
yeah,
want them to do well, you want to like be involved.
yeah.
But I think also like it's different for girls and boys. I know that you know, my boyfriend's actually a professional footballer,
Wow,
and
cool.
he can definitely take feedback from his parents way more so than I can. And I don't know if it's like you know, like perhaps your two football sons might,
Yep.
you know, appreciate your input more than
Yeah.
your daughter, just because, you know, females and males probably definitely act
Yeah, they
and
do.
behave differently. So I don't know. It's very yeah, I'm very interested in the subject though, because for parents it must be, like I said, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because
Yeah.
you can't actually win that much. Like
Yeah.
you guys can't.
Yeah, no, it's been difficult. However, what we do try and say to the children now is rather than kind of offer them probably more with like kind of Ava's tennis as kind of our kind of like experience. We try not to kind of offer too much kind of coaching advice because like you said before, you've got your kind of coach for that. And for
Yeah,
like our eldest and like kind of my boys now, um, they have like kind of their professional coaches who have kind of been there and they've kind of done that themselves. So for us, it's like, well, we're confident in the coaches now.
yeah,
We're kind of
exactly.
confident in how the children are kind of playing and how they kind of work as individuals, so to speak.
Yeah,
Uh, so we'll just kind of like we said, just offer kind of like encouragement and just make sure we're kind
yeah,
of there for them. If they do want to
exactly.
like go and like kind of play tennis or like kind of play football in the garden, then yeah, we will.
Yeah,
But we'll try not to be too like kind of probably pushy or like too
yeah,
kind of coachy when we're kind of just like kind of at home and stuff. So yeah, it's
yeah,
like we've said, it is hard getting that kind of balance right because you do want your children to do so kind of well and you want the best for them. However, sometimes the best for them doesn't always kind of get portrayed as a parent. You kind of go over that line and get a bit too kind of pushy.
yeah,
So it is
definitely.
difficult getting that balance.
It
So
is, it is, and I think for me, like I'm lucky, like I said, as a squash player, because this pool is so much smaller.
yeah,
Um, I didn't have to get pushed by my parents, and
okay,
don't get me wrong, like I worked very hard, like, and I was always like doing my fitness and doing the extra stuff, but I think if I were in a different sport, perhaps
yeah,
tennis,
okay,
then I think my parents would have potentially had to push me more and tell me like you need to, if you want to compete at that top level, you're gonna have to, you know, not eat
yeah,
this
yeah,
piece of junk food. Or
yeah,
whereas they never did that for me, and it worked out because, you know, I am where I am now. But
yeah,
I always think if I was in a different sport, they might have had to push me more, just because, you know, like swimmers, tennis players,
yeah,
they have to just train more because there's much more competition, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So
Okay.
that's where I find it interesting.
So my next question would be then, was there any times that you've kind of like felt like giving up along the way due to like kind of any setbacks or kind of injuries, for instance? For instance, we had Jory Davis on, who we've mentioned previously on the show. So she got drafted in the WNBA, but before official practice started, she actually got cut. So she didn't actually play for who she was drafted for. And she said at that moment in time, when she was over in America, she said for about 2 days, she was like really low and possibly kind of feeling a little bit depressed. She said just staying in the room on her own. Because she'd kind of worked up for like so many like kind of years to a point where she'd just been drafted and then it almost got kind of taken away from her. Is there been any times where you've kind of like felt like kind of giving up and thinking like, oh, it's just kind of too hard, or is your mindset not like that, where you just think it's just another kind of obstacle that we can kind of navigate around, and this is what I really want to kind of
Um,
do?
yeah, I've definitely never felt like I want to give up.
Yeah.
I've definitely had setbacks where I've
Yeah.
felt, this is just what am I doing with my life kind of thing. Like one time last season, I got really injured out of absolutely nowhere. So
Right. Okay.
I finished a session. I was walking to my car and then literally suddenly just could not walk again. And I
Wow.
was just about to go to El Gouna in Egypt for a tournament, for the last tournament of the season.
Yeah.
And I had to play it in order to qualify for World Tour finals. And this was just before the Commonwealth Games. And I genuinely just like couldn't walk. And I went to get scanned. I thought I'd had a stress fracture, and they were like, no, we can't see anything structurally wrong.
Yeah.
But I couldn't I couldn't walk. So I like
Wow.
couldn't play for a bit. I had Commonwealth Games coming up rapidly, and
Yeah.
the problem is when you're in this elite sporting environment, there's always something that you have to keep your eye on. So even
Yeah.
if you're injured for one tournament, the next tournament's coming up so quickly, and
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
to train to be able to feel like you're prepared for it, but
Yeah.
you obviously can't train if you're injured. So it's setbacks like that where you're in I was in Egypt, couldn't walk, couldn't
Yeah.
play, like on my own. I was just
Yeah.
like, what am I doing? This is tough, but I still yeah, I'm lucky. I always, like I said, I just like really, when I'm fit, when I'm injured, it's just horrendous. But when
Yeah.
I'm fit, I just, really enjoy the day-to-day graft, and I
Yeah.
have goals in mind that
Yeah.
I'm desperately trying to achieve, and I'll do all I can to try and
Yeah.
achieve it. So, and I'm still quite fresh on the tour as well, only been 2 years. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be points where I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
get me out of here. But yeah, luckily I haven't had that feeling of I want to stop.
Okay. Okay. So then would you say that your parents have sacrificed to kind of support you on your journey so far? So I mean, like we had Tom Smith. So he's a professional cricketer. So he played for Gloucestershire, or he still plays for Gloucestershire. And he was saying from April to, I think it was September, would be when his cricket season was, and his dad would travel around with him for that. So his dad would work kind of around his kind of cricket season. So he said his dad sacrificed everything to support him on his cricket journey. So would you say that your parents
Mm.
have kind of sacrificed to allow you to become the player that you are at the moment, number 8 in the world, hoping to get to the kind of number 1?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, I suppose that they, like, because of the nature of squash, like we were away every weekend, but and they'd have to taxi me to and
Yeah.
from school every day. So my mum would have to like work her she like gave up work when I was about 10 years old and started working at our local squash and tennis club, but
Right.
she'd obviously have to like arrange her hours around when my
Yeah.
dad was
Yeah.
home so they could take me around. And my poor brother was just kind of pottering along, just accepting that my mum was away every weekend with me and he'd be
Yeah.
with my dad. And
Okay. Yeah.
the money, like the financial commitment of it is crazy.
Yeah.
uh, they'd spend so much money on me and my coaching, getting me the
Yeah.
best coaching, rackets, hotels, train
Yeah.
tickets. Like it's just such a financial commitment. And fortunately, with their jobs, they were able to do it. But
Okay.
I know a lot of people aren't in that same
Yeah.
situation. I don't know what the kind of alternative is if you can't afford it.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to get your child to that elite level?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's a huge sacrifice, and you have to have the financial means to do so.
Yeah. Okay. So then with that then, when you kind of look back on your journey so far, both kind of positive and negative, kind of physically and like kind of mentally, would you say climbing the mountain has been worth the view so far for you? Albeit that, like you've said, you're only really at the start of your kind of journey and career.
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely. I It all stems from, like I said, just kind of I love what I do, and I kind of love the
Yeah.
challenge of every day I want to like challenge myself to get the most out of myself, and I feel like there's um so much room to improve, and I'm lucky that I've already had success for the last 2 years. Obviously, the
Yeah.
winning the gold medal was like a huge thing for me, and
Yeah.
just thinking about that makes everything worth it. I think even
Yeah.
for my family, just seeing how proud they were makes me
Yeah.
like emotional, because like I said, they've sacrificed so much, and when you actually achieve something big, you can
Yeah.
like kind of look around and reflect and be like, I literally wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for you guys. So like
Yeah.
it's just as much for them.
Yeah.
And although it is hard, and like there are so many downs, and I've experienced a lot of downs, and my parents have had to deal with that,
Yeah.
like I've had points where I've like myself, you connect your self-worth to your performance on the
Yeah.
squash court. So it's like I don't feel worthy as a person if I'm not performing how I should,
Yeah.
when it's my job, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if I'm spending all this time working towards something, and then the match comes and I don't perform, it's like, how do you kind of disconnect that feeling of I myself as a
Yeah.
person and am a waste of space, So my parents having to deal with
Yeah.
me feeling like that must be pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
Because I'm me outside of squash. I'm still a person.
Yeah.
I can't be defined by a performance, but
Yeah.
you do feel like that, and I think that's just kind of inevitable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think that's what's shown up with quite a lot of the guests as well. I think from people who are kind of on the outside, say like watching yourselves on say like TV, or from like kind of at the side of the kind of court or the pitches, I think you just kind of automatically presume that you don't kind of have those kind of same emotions or the same like kind of feelings. At the end of the day, you are still a human being. If you get beat, you're going to be like kind of sad and you're going to be disappointed. It's just that you're able to kind of react and respond differently than what say normal kind of people would kind of do. You're probably a bit more kind of resilient. So with little kind of setbacks, you'd kind of navigate around them, and it'd just be like we said before, a little kind of speed bump. It wouldn't be the end of the road for it. Or if there
Yeah.
was, if you saw that there was a disappointment, you wouldn't see the brick wall and think, oh well, I can't get over that. How do we kind of get around it almost? So
Yeah.
I do think there's a different kind of mentality, but like we said, at the end of the day, you are all kind of human, and you will get kind of upset, and there will be like kind of tears, and there will be kind of fallings out. However, when you're actually on the court, you may not kind of show it as much as what other people kind of do.
Yeah, for
So
sure. And
so
obviously
yeah,
it's like it takes a lot. I mean, I say like I've never wanted to give up, but the amount of times when I was, 13, 14, and you play those like league matches
yeah,
against oh, for me personally, I was playing like older men who were
yeah,
like terrible at squash, and they'd beat me every time, and I'd be like, I'm giving up, like I'm not playing, 'cause that raw emotion of losing when you're
yeah,
younger is just so like overwhelming.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm sure, there's gonna be tantrums and stuff as a
yeah.
child, and losing definitely doesn't get easier, but you kind of learn to, to be a bit less extreme, I guess, with your reactions.
Yeah. All right. So with that then, recently one of my boys got released from a football academy.
Okay.
He was down at Blackburn Rovers, and he got released, and it was his first kind of taste of like kind of rejection. He was only 11. Well, he's 11. He was 11 at the time when he kind of got released. So how did you kind of personally cope at at that kind of age, where do you know like where you just said you was getting kind of beat off the older guys, so you thought you should be like kind of beating, and how do you kind of do you know like in the next kind of couple of days, how do you kind of like what's your kind of thought process then?
Yeah, football is really tough, and obviously because like my boyfriend's a pro footballer, so I like know quite a lot about the system and
Yeah.
stuff now, and it football is brutal, I think. Like with like your eldest being a tennis player and like
Yeah.
me being a squash player, I think it's very objective.
Yep.
You know, if you're better than someone,
Yep.
you have the opportunity to prove it on that
Right.
day.
Okay.
Whereas football, you know, you could think you're better than somebody, but you're kind of your ability is determined by the
Yep.
perception of somebody else and how many other players they have in that position. There's so many
Yep.
factors that go into
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
it's so difficult, I think, as a footballer because you know if you lose in tennis or in squash in an individual sport, you can kind of reflect on what you did wrong. But
Yep.
if you're 11 years old getting released from a football club, like you have no
Yep.
idea kind of
Yeah.
why that is or what you need to improve on. So
Yep.
um like I said, I had times where I lost matches that made me feel sick. Like I was so gutted, but I wanted to prove I always had that belief in
Right.
myself that I
Yeah.
was good enough to
Yeah.
win. So I
Okay.
remember
Yeah.
always coming back the next week and
Yeah.
just proving it. I
Yeah.
would go
Yeah.
to like the England squads and I'd like prove that I could win these matches
Yeah.
because I had the ability to do that because it's just a
Yeah.
one-on-one match. Whereas football, you obviously you have to go in every day and prove that you're better than what they have. But at the end of the day, if your opinion,
Yeah.
if you think you're better than what they have, it doesn't actually it's not taken into consideration because it's
Yeah.
if they think and
Yeah.
that and there are so many factors that can determine that, you know,
Yeah.
which is
So
so I find it so tough. I
so we had so one of our first guests was Manny Onorise. So he used to play for West Ham United. And we've told this story before, but it links quite
Oh
kind of
cool.
nicely to this conversation now. So he was playing in the youth team. He was in the under-17s at the time, and it was when Sam Allardyce was the manager at West Ham, and he saw something in Mane and thought like, right, he's going to be the next kind of like big thing at like kind of West Ham. He's going to be like our next centre back. So over the pre-season when Sam Allardyce was there, he asked Mane to join him on the pre-season tour. So he played like in the matches. He was on the bench in the new season against like Arsenal, and as Manny said in the interview, he said I was in that bubble, and he said I thought I'd made it. I was on
Mhm.
like the bench for the first team. I was on the bench against Arsenal, which he said like he'd been like kind of working up for from like when he'd been like so young. So he was absolutely like made up. He was so pleased. But then Sam Allardyce got sacked and Slaven Bilic, a new manager, came in. And then when he came in, he saw that Mane was only like kind of 17, 18 at the time. He personally didn't think he was like right
Yeah.
for that position at the time. So then he just went back into say like the youth team and at that moment Mane said like he was quite like kind of depressed and it did knock his
Mm.
confidence loads because he just thought he'd made it. He thought he
Yeah.
was there because he was in the first team. So yeah, it's so. I think any sports they're so kind of tough. And again,
So
from
tough.
speaking to all the athletes, that intrinsic motivation and that resilience and that kind of thick skin is just it's just so evident and apparent when you kind of start speaking to everybody. So okay, so as we come to the end of the show, we have a tradition, and we ask all our guests if they have any favourite quotes or philosophies that they've kind of used on a daily basis to where they are today. So, for instance, one of our previous guests was Jory, who we've spoke about today, and she said she didn't necessarily have a famous kind of quote. However, it was just some basic rules that she kind of like runs her life by, and basically she said to always stay grounded and to close to people and never get too high and above the public as is always a mother or a doctor or a teacher. Everybody's kind of great in their own way. So basically
Mm.
just to kind of stay humble and just kind of enjoy the journey. So I was just wondering if you had any like kind of quotes that you kind of like work by or have kind of used along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's so many. I mean, I love what you just said about jury, like um trying to stay grounded is
Yeah.
like the main thing. But I think one that always springs to my mind is a quote by Michael Jordan, you know,
Okay.
who's arguably one of the best, most successful athletes of
Yeah.
all time. And I can't remember the exact quote, but it was like talking about how he's missed more than 10,000 shots in his
Yeah.
career.
Yep. Yep.
He's lost an X amount of games and he's failed way more times than he's failed over and over again in
Yeah.
his life, and
Yeah.
that's why he succeeds.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that. Like, you're not gonna just have a road where you just win, win, win. It's just not
Yeah.
realistic, and also you're not gonna improve by that.
Yeah.
It's like the failing and learning what
Yeah.
happened. Just like, Michael Jordan, if Michael Jordan has failed like a million times, then I think
Yeah.
we're all going to fail a million and one times. So I just love that quote. Like, the reason
Yeah.
why he succeeded is because he's failed so much. And I
Yeah.
think no matter what level you are or what sport you're in, like, you can take inspiration from that, because the
Yeah.
best of the best fail, and so do people below that. So,
Yeah.
there's always room to improve.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right, isn't it? You can't be scared of failure, and we say that to the children, and it's only probably something that we've learned kind of recently, kind of learned as well. Really,
Yeah.
you can't be scared of trying something different. And what's the worst that can kind of happen? You fail, and you just kind of learn from it, and you might
Yeah.
kind of change it and kind of tweak it, and you'll kind of do something different. And like say Michael Jordan and like with all the athletes, they'll miss so many more kind of like shots or like kind of puts or baskets, depending on what sport they're in. However, that's exactly what makes them great and amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that one. Okay,
Yeah.
so finally, what's next on your journey? I know you're currently on a bit of a break now for it's about 5 or 6 weeks.
Yes.
And then what have you kind of got planned for, like, say, the rest of the year that you could share with us today?
Yeah, so I've got my first tournament back after the off season will be nationals, the British
Okay,
nationals in August, and
right,
then
okay,
I'll be off to Paris and then Qatar for the first couple of platinum events.
wow,
So yeah, it's a pretty busy schedule again. Our season kind of is split into two halves, so
yeah,
it's like end of August through to December, and then
hmm,
January through to June. So
okay,
yeah, I'll just be traveling, hopefully, you know, trying to keep getting that ranking up,
yeah,
and sure I'll have a lot more times where I, lose and don't feel great, but
yeah.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully get some good results as well.
So you've just finished competing in Egypt. How long a break will you kind of have now? Because you was competing last week, wasn't you?
Yes.
So how will you have a rest now for a while and then start again?
Yeah. So I just finished the World Tour finals. So that's like kind of 3 weeks after the end of the official season. So
Yep,
most of the athletes would finish after El Guna, take their break.
yep,
But the top eight kind of have the tour finals. So now I'm gonna have like a week off squash,
yep.
and then I'm not going on holiday until August, so it's a bit of a
Right.
funny time. But
Okay.
yeah, I'll take a week off and then get back into training, and then have another little holiday, and then kind of get back
Ah,
into
very
it.
nice. Very
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so Gina, thank you so much for being a guest on Elite Children: A Family Portrait. I'm sure the listeners at home can definitely see they're not alone in raising elite level children. And over the past months of doing this podcast, we've been overwhelmed by the professional family in their openness to share such kind of resilient, motivating, and emotional stories with us that we can all use to inspire us in our everyday lives. So, thank you so much for adding to that today. Um, Good luck with your future tournaments. I hope you have a nice, relaxing break before you start your training. And I'm sure with a mindset and a personality like yours that you've kind of demonstrated in such a short space of time, I'm sure the future of your kind of squash career will be a huge success. So Gina Kennedy, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Simon, and yeah, good luck to all your four as well. I'll be looking out for them for sure.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Gina.
Thanks, Simon.